Hey everybody, welcome back to MuseThemes.com, and today we're walking through our new button effects widget for Muse. This widget shows a full screen animated transition when a button is clicked on your Muse site. Now it's great for grabbing the attention of a site visitor, important links, or just sites looking for a lot of movement between pages. As you can see in the demo here, there are 11 different effects, all of which you can preview right here. This widget can be linked up with any button on your site, and it can also show the selected transition on a page redirect or while opening a pop-up. Let me switch over to Muse here, and I'm going to start with a blank page for now. And right off the bat, let's jump into our widgets library, grab our button effects widget out, and drop it onto our page. Now, as you might expect, all we get right now is this widget placeholder, which we'll need to link up to a button on our page. And we'll get to that in a few moments. For right now, let's talk first about placement and different button modes that are available here. Let's jump into the settings panel. And let's first talk about this first option of button action. There are 3 modes to pick from, one of which will probably be the first choice for most Muse users, but I'm going to run through them all right now. Down here on Open Modal. Now in this mode, the widget generates a content block and its own button which opens a modal, also called a pop-up. When using this mode, the widget will display a block on the page containing a title text and a button, and when the button is clicked, the effects transition is seen just before the modal is opened. The modal also contains text copy that is entered inside right here in the widgets panel. The option above this is redirect to URL block. Now this mode also generates a content block on your page containing a title text and a button, but then when the button is clicked, the effects transition is seen just before the user is redirected to a new URL. And finally up here we have redirect URL button. Now this mode links any button on your site to the widget, so the effects transition is seen when you click the button that it's linked to just before the user is then redirected to a new URL, which can either be on your site or a third-party link elsewhere. Now that last mode I mentioned, redirect to URL button, is the mode that will likely be used the most, and that's what we're going to spend most of our time explaining right here in this video. But before we get to that, let's explore one of these block modes first. For both block modes, for now I'll select the URL redirect block. These are the only modes that require the widget to be placed on the canvas. Now when using these modes, the placement of the widget does matter, as does the size of the widget container. If using a block mode, place the widget where you want the block to appear, and then size the widget container accordingly. Feel free to use a full browser width on it as well if you like. Now let me switch this to Open Modal mode. Again, as I mentioned, the placement and sizing of the widget matters here as well, and you can also visit these drop-downs here for block title styling, block button styling, and modal styling. These are where you're going to style up all the text, colors, and buttons involved in the content blocks. It's also where you're going to enter the text for the modal, if applicable to your button action. Now one more thing I need to do before we preview this is load in the Png Image Mask. All transitions here require an image mask, all of which we've included in the widget download, and I'll talk about this a bit more towards the end of the video. But all we need to do is click Add File here, and navigate to the image masks on your drive that we've included in the widget download, using the one that matches the selected transition, in this case, Scrub. And we'll confirm that. Perfect. And just for the sake of preview, let me center the widget, and let's expand it larger so we can see more of what we're working with here. Now finally, let's switch our button action to redirect to URL button and explore this a little bit, as this will probably be the most used version of this widget. Now for this, I'm going to switch over to one of our themes, and I'm going to scroll down here to a pre-existing button that's been built here as a Sign Me Up button. Now let me drag out the widget from the panel once again, and this time I can keep the size as default and I can move it off canvas, because remember, with this button action setting, placement and size doesn't matter because you'll be linking the widget to a custom button on the site, as we can see here. So back in the settings panel, once again, we need a destination URL. So I'm just going to type in the Muse Themes web address, https://www.musethemes.com. And as I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be a third-party link. You can link to internal pages of your own site as well. You just have to type the full URL to said page in this field for it to function. Now let's click on our Sign Me Up button, and I'm going to expand our graphic styles panel. We can see that a graphic style called button has already been applied, and we couldn't leave that alone or create a new one. Let me make a new one specifically for this effect, and I'll call it transition. There we go. So let's jump back into our settings panel for the widget. And here under custom redirect button graphic style, we're simply going to enter transition. Next up is block background color, which doesn't really apply in this mode, but you can customize that here if you're using any of the other two modes where there are blocks involved. Additionally, if you're using this mode we're on here, none of these dropdowns will apply since we're using a pre-designed button that's already on our page. But the next setting up is transition animation. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are 11 different animations available to choose from, and you can experiment with them here in preview mode, or you can visit the live demo page of the widget and test them out here on our website as well. Keep in mind that each animation, like I mentioned, requires a Png Image Mask file, so regardless of the animation you choose, you will need to match it with the proper PNG file. We've included all the PNG files in a folder within the downloaded zip file for the widget, so for the sake of demo, let's change this to Diamond, and now let's click here to add our PNG mask. We'll load in the one for Diamond. There we go. And we can preview this in a browser once again. There we go. Let's scroll down and we'll click on our button. And we've got our transition and redirect functioning seamlessly. Let's jump back to Muse and test one more example. In the transition animation setting, let's switch it to Gummy. And we'll need to add a new image mask, so let's find the corresponding one now. There we go. And one more browser preview. And we'll scroll down and click. And there we go. Everything is functioning perfectly. One more quick note on the PNG files. If you find an animation you like, but you don't like the color, you can update the PNG file. So just load it into something like Photoshop or Illustrator. A quick method we've used in Photoshop is to use the selection brush to select the entire PNG. It's easy since the background is transparent, and then you can just use the paintbrush to recolor the whole thing. So that's about it. Thanks for joining us for our button effects walkthrough from Muse Themes. Hope you enjoy this new widget, and if you need any additional support, feel free to reach out to us anytime. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.